For decades, Pakistan produced some of the most feared fast bowlers cricket has ever seen. Bowlers who could bend an entire match with raw pace and venomous reverse swing alone. Wasim Akram, Waqar Younis, Shoaib Akhtar. Names that defined generations and terrified batting lineups around the world. But somewhere between 2015 and today, that legendary production line slowed to a trickle. Fewer genuine match winners emerged. Injuries piled up faster than highlight reels. A pace attack that once struck fear into every opponent now struggles to hold its own, even in home conditions. What exactly happened to Pakistan's fast bowling factory? This is the story of a decline more than a decade in the making. In 2015, Pakistan still carried the last embers of its golden pace generation. Wahab Riaz's blistering World Cup spell against Australia proved the talent hadn't vanished entirely. But cracks were showing everywhere else. Mohammad Irfan's height brought awkward bounce, undone by chronic injury. Junaid Khan was fading from selection. The generation that had carried Pakistan's attack was aging out, with no clear successors emerging from domestic cricket's flat, batting-friendly pitches. Then came a moment that hid the problem entirely. At the 2017 Champions Trophy, Pakistan's bowlers, led by returning Mohammad Amir, dismantled India in the final and lifted the trophy as massive underdogs. It felt like proof the pace tradition was alive and well. But a single tournament win papered over structural weaknesses that hadn't gone anywhere. Amir himself was a rebuilt career, not a new discovery. Behind him, the bench was thin. Promising quicks were inconsistently picked, rushed into international cricket, or quietly dropped after a handful of underwhelming matches. Domestic first-class cricket still rewarded batting-friendly conditions, giving young fast bowlers little incentive to develop the skills that had once made Pakistani pace so distinctive. The celebration of 2017 bought the system time, but it didn't fix anything underneath the surface. Real hope arrived with two teenagers. Naseem Shah, remarkably still a schoolboy, and Shaheen Afridi announced themselves as generational talents almost overnight. Genuine pace, late swing, and a hunger reminiscent of Pakistan's greatest quicks. For a moment, it looked like the pipeline had finally produced its next stars. But the same old pattern crept back in. Both were thrown into heavy workloads early, across formats, with limited protection or long-term load management. Then, the pandemic hit, wiping out cricket schedules and disrupting the very domestic structures meant to build the next tier behind them. Development pathways that were already fragile became even less reliable. Pakistan now had two brilliant young quicks, but strikingly little depth forming behind them. Shaheen Afridi's rise peaked spectacularly at the 2021 T20 World Cup, ripping through India's top order in a performance that genuinely felt like the start of a new, dominant era for Pakistani pace. Pakistan reached another T20 World Cup final the following year, agonizingly close to glory once again. But behind those highlight reels, injuries were quietly piling up. Shaheen tore his knee ligament, missing crucial cricket during what should have been the prime years of his career. Naseem Shah, too, battled recurring physical breakdowns of his own. Off the field, the situation was just as unstable. Pakistan Cricket Board chairman changed with dizzying frequency, and with every change came a new selection philosophy, a new fitness regime, an entirely new set of priorities. No single fast bowling development program ever survived long enough to be properly judged on results, let alone corrected and improved over time. By the 2023 World Cup, played partly on Pakistan's own subcontinent turf, the cracks had become impossible to hide any longer. The pace attack looked blunt, injury hit, and desperately short of support options. Naseem Shah's fitness remained fragile throughout. Shaheen Afridi returned from injury, but never quite found his old rhythm again.
Domestic pitches continued to reward spin and batting over genuine pace, starving the entire system of match-hardened quicks coming through the ranks. Promising teenagers kept emerging in trials and academies, but too many broke down early, got mismanaged by inconsistent coaching, or simply never received the sustained first-class bowling workload that real fast bowlers need in order to develop properly. By 2026, Pakistan's fast bowling cupboard, once the most feared in all of world cricket, looked thinner than at any point in an entire generation. The decline was never one single bad decision. It was a full decade of unresolved structural failure, finally showing up unmistakably on the scoreboard.